She slapped him, right there, in front of the entire terminal. Not a scream, not a warning, just crack. The kind of sound that slices through airport chatter like a lightning strike. For a second, it felt like the whole world froze. And the worst part? She thought she was right. She thought no one would stop her, that this teenage boy, standing there silent and still, was just another kid not listening. She didn't know he was deaf. She didn't care to know. And she had no idea who his father was. Let me take you back a bit. It was one of those days at the airport where everything feels a little too loud. Kids whining about iPads, someone arguing over carry-on sizes, and the constant hum of distant announcements that sound like they're coming from underwater. Gate 14. At Hampton Regional wasn't special. Just a bunch of tired travelers half asleep in stiff seats, waiting for a delayed flight to San Francisco. 17-year-old Bud. Miles Jordan sat near the end of the row, hoodie up, thumbs tapping away on his phone. He was texting his cousin back home in Atlanta. Something about the chili cheese fries at the food court being fire. And if you looked close, if you were paying attention, you'd see the subtle cues. The way his eyes scanned for facial expressions. How he tilted his head to read lips. The tiny device barely visible behind his left ear. Miles had been deaf since he was 3. But that didn't mean he didn't know how to listen. Across the terminal, his father. Ellis Jordan stood by the window, sipping coffee. He wore a simple charcoal jacket, slacks, polished shoes, the kind of quiet style that didn't scream for attention. And that was Ellis's way, always calm, always observing. No flash, just presence. What most people didn't know, what one woman in particular really didn't know, was that Ellis Jordan wasn't just another dad on a business trip. He was the founder and CEO of Jade Sky Airways, the very airline plastered all over the terminal walls. But today, he wasn't flying private. He and Miles were traveling commercial, part of a tradition he believed in deeply. You don't learn humility at 40, he always said. You learn it sitting in coach when you're 17. And sitting in coach is exactly what they planned to do. That is, until Janine Coulter showed up. Now, Janine, she was something else, mid-50s. Stiff bob haircut that didn't move even when she did, and a permanent scowl like life had wronged her personally. She'd worked the gate at Hampton for over 2 decades and wore her authority like a badge, not the shiny kind. The kind rusted by bitterness and repetition. To her, every passenger was a potential headache. And when her eyes landed on Miles, slouched, hoodie up, texting, she made a judgment call in 2 seconds flat. Just another kid with attitude, probably ignoring the announcements, probably playing music too loud, probably going to be a problem. She never wondered why he hadn't responded to the boarding calls, or why he didn't look up when she barked out. Final boarding for Flight 297. She just marched down the row, pointed at him, and snapped. Hey, you get in line or miss the plane. Miles didn't flinch, didn't even notice. He was still mid-text. So Janine did what no sane adult should ever do. She reached down, grabbed his arm, and yanked. That got his attention, and his father's. Ellis was already walking over, calm but purposeful. And as Miles looked up, his face pale with shock, he started signing rapidly, explaining in ASL that he didn't understand what was happening. Janine just rolled her eyes. Oh, please, she said, voice dripping with contempt. What is this now? Some kind of act. She turned to Ellis. Control your kid, sir. He's holding up the line. He's deaf, Ellis said evenly, signing to Miles while speaking aloud. He wasn't ignoring you, he didn't hear you. Janine snorted. Yeah, right, convenient. And before Ellis could even react, before anyone could, she reared back and slapped Miles across the cheek. The sound rang out. Conversation stopped. Phones dropped. Even the toddler 2 seats away went silent. Ellis didn't raise his voice. He didn't lunge. He simply stepped forward, placed his hand gently on Miles's shoulder, and looked Janine dead in the eye. You just made the worst mistake of your career." She scoffed, still fuming, still in power mode. "Oh yeah. And what are you gonna do?" complained a corporate. "I am corporate, honey. I've been here 26 years. I know this job better than anyone." Ellis pulled out his phone. No wallet, no ID, just one smooth gesture. He tapped the screen, made a single call, and held it to his ear. "Yeah, this is Jordan. Gate 14. We've got a situation. I need Lawson and PR on standby. No statements yet. I'll handle it personally." Janine blinked, Jordan. Then it hit her. Her eyes darted from Ellis's face to the logos behind the counter, back to him, then down to Miles. And realization set in like concrete. He wasn't some random dad. And this wasn't just a disrespectful teenager. They were the Jordans. By the time the terminal manager showed up, sweating through his shirt, Janine was already spiraling. Her voice shook as she tried to explain. "I didn't know. He didn't answer, I thought." "You thought wrong," Ellis cut in, sharp and quiet. "And now you're going to answer for it." She was escorted off the floor before boarding even began. No farewell. No locker to clean out. Just silence. The kind of silence Miles knew all too well. But that wasn't the end, not even close. Ellis didn't just want her fired. He wanted accountability real. Public accountability. Within 48 hours. Jade Sky's legal team filed a $5 million civil suit against Janine personally. And every inch of her life began to unravel. Her sons called in tears. "Mom, is it true? Did you really slap a deaf kid?" Her address was leaked. Her vacation photos were dragged across social media next to headlines that read, "Gate agent assaults deaf teen." Her husband's contracting business lost clients. Her home went up for sale. The mortgage payments couldn't keep up with the fallout. But the real twist, Ellis offered a deal. He'd drop the lawsuit, wipe it all away, if Janine agreed to one condition. She would spend 2 years volunteering with the deaf community, learning ASL, attending sensitivity trainings, and giving public speeches about what she'd done to schools, to companies, to strangers. It wasn't revenge, it was redemption if she chose to take it. And she did. For 2 years, Janine Coulter traveled across the country, standing in front of rooms full of people who looked at her like a cautionary tale. She fumbled her signs, stumbled over her apologies, and cried more times than she'd admit. But she did the work. She became the work. Then came the final twist. At a tech summit in San Jose, where Janine was giving one of her now routine, "I messed up" speeches. A young man in the back raised his hand during the Q&A. He stood. "My name is Miles Jordan," he said, calm, steady. "And yeah, I'm that kid." Gasps. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. "I spent a year afraid to go to airports," he continued. "Afraid of people like you. But now, I run a foundation. I work with schools and startups building tech for deaf kids. And believe it or not, you helped that happen." He paused. "You didn't silence me, you gave me volume." Janine broke not in shame, but in something like peace. A single tear ran down her cheek, not because she was sad, but because someone had seen her and still called her by name. 5 years later, they crossed paths again. Not at a summit, but at a fundraiser in Manhattan. Miles touched her arm as she turned to leave. She froze. And for the first time in forever, he looked at her, not with anger, not even pity, but with acknowledgement. Quiet, human, and whole. Sometimes karma doesn't just destroy, sometimes it rebuilds. But let's be honest. Was it justice? Was it too much or not enough? Let us know what you think in the comments. Should Janine have lost everything for one slap? Or did it take that slap for the world to finally hear someone like Miles? If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more true stories that hit different. And remember, some power doesn't shout, it signs.